Genesis chapter 14, the message. Then this Raphael, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elazar, Laomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, went off to war to fight Bera, king of Sodom, and Bishra, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. The second group of kings, the attacked, came together at the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. They had been under the thumb of Laomer for 12 years. In the 13th year they revolted. In the 14th year, Laomer and the kings allied with him set out and defeated Rephaim and Astoroth, Karnaim, and Zizim, and Ham, and Enim, and Shavakariathaim, and the Horites in their hill country of Zair, as far as El Paran, on the far edge of the desert. On their way back, they stopped at En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and conquered the whole region of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. That's when the king of Sodom marched out with the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, the king of Bela, that is Zor. They drew up in battle formation against their enemies in the valley of Siddim, against Laomer, king of Alim, Tidal, king of Goim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elazar, 4 kings against 5. The valley of Siddim was full of tar pits. When the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell into the tar pits, but the rest escaped into the mountains. The 4 kings captured all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, all their food and equipment, and went on their way. They captured Lot, Abram's nephew, who was living in Sodom at the time, taking everything he owned with them. A fugitive came and reported to Abram the Hebrew. Abram was living in the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Alner. They were allies to Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken prisoner, he lined up his servants, all of them born in his household. There were 318 of them, and chased after the captors all the way to Dan. Abram and his men split into small groups and attacked by night. They chased them as far as Hobah, just north of Damascus. They recovered all the plunder along with nephew Lot and his possessions, including the women and the people. After Abram returned from defeating Laomer and his allied kings, the king of Sodom came out to greet him in the valley of Shaveh and King's Valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of the high God, and blessed him. Blessed be Abram by the high God, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be the high God who handed your enemies over to you. Abram gave 1/10 of all the recovered plunder. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me back the people, but keep the plunder for yourself." But Abram told the king of Sodom, "I swear to God, the high God, creator of heaven and earth, this solemn oath, that I'll take nothing from you, not so much as a thread or a shoestring, I'm not going to have you go around saying I made Abram rich. Nothing for me other than what the young men ate and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, there to get their share of the plunder. Okay, so after reading this version compared to the King James Version, it's a little more clear what's the picture here. Yes, there is a war between the kings, as already mentioned in the King James reading. There seems to be a rebellion against so it looks like I'm going to go back to verses 1 and 2, the very beginning. Then this Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Alazar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goim, went off to war to fight Bera, king of Sodom, Bishra, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zor. This is verses 3 and 4. This second group of kings, which you're talking about, the Sodom and Gomorrah group, they came together at the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. They had been under the thumb of Kedorlaomer for 12 years. In the 13th year, they rebelled. So this is Sodom and Gomorrah, and the other two kingdoms. Which other kingdoms is it two? Barsha, king of Gomorrah, Bera, king of Sodom, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela. So there's 5. There's Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela. And they're rebelling against these other kings. The king of Shinar, Elazar, Elam, and Goim. In the 13th year, they rebelled against those first 4 kings mentioned, which is a clearer picture of who's on whose side. But in the 14th year, Kedorlaomer, this is verse 5 through 7. In the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him set out and defeated Rephaim and the Astorath Karnaim and the Zuzim and Ham, the Amim and Shaveh, Karithaim, and the Horites, and their hill country of Zir as far as El Paran on the edge of the desert. I'm sorry, I'm butchering these names, which definitely kind of takes away from the attempt to understand what's going on here. But I mean, the gist of all of this is that these 4 kings, Kedorlaomer, it seems like to be the leader king of all these kings, had rule over this area. Just a bunch of kingdoms for many, many, many years. It says 12 years. The 13th year, it looks like Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela rebelled. But Kedorlaomer, which was the leader of the other group of kings, which was, I guess, the main king of all of this that had everybody under his thumb, he allied with those first 3 kings, and he started kind of just taking everybody out. Didn't matter that they rebelled. He was winning, so Sodom and Gomorrah were just kind of down and out there. It looks like in verse 8, that's when the king of Sodom marched with the king of Gomorrah, with the others, Admah and Zeboim, Bela. And verse 9, they drew up in battle formation against their enemies in the valley of Siddim. But we're moving on quickly to verse 10. The valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, because they just couldn't take it, like this other king and his allies, they were taking them out. So they ran, and they fell into tar pits that were in Siddim. And it looks like the rest of whoever was left, aside from those kings, they escaped to the mountains. So, I mean, they were taken over. It didn't even matter that they rebelled. They were losing. And it looks like, I'm trying so hard to, like, interpret everything that's going on. It's like a serious battle happening over here where Lot is. And unfortunately, Lot is caught up in the middle of all of this craziness. There's just a bunch of kingdoms fighting right now. And he's in the middle of all this. I'm sure he didn't predict it when he chose the Jordan. He thought it was going to be this lush, beautiful place, which is like, looks can be deceiving. You know, it doesn't matter if the thing looks really good or the prospect looks good. If you don't have God to consult about that, get the approval on it, I don't know. It could just be anyway. It could go good or bad. Who knows? You're kind of taking a gamble here. And I guess that's what's happened here with Lot, because he took this beautiful, lush place. Abram let him choose in the previous chapter, Genesis 13. And he chose what looked good. But it wasn't good. As you can see here. And 14 is just like kingdoms fighting. And he got wrapped up in that. He's just a regular, Joe Schmo with his riches or whatever. And he was caught up in that, and they took those 4 kings that, took over Sodom and Gomorrah and the other 3 that were with them. They took Lot and everything he owned. So, it says in 13, a fugitive reported to Abram. And Abram had allies at this point. Memra the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Anir, he had allies. And when he heard from the fugitive that what happened with Lot, his nephew, he went by night and started smiting folks to get him back. And he did, successfully. I mean, of course, the hand of God is in this. There's no way he would have been successful if God wasn't with him, because this is a whole lot going on. And it says here for the majority of this chapter that these 4 kingdoms are extremely strong. I mean, they're taking out 5 kingdoms, rebellious kingdoms. They don't care. And they're taking Lot and stuff. So they're strong. But Abram, with his camp, I'm sorry, I'm reviewing a verse really fast. I'm not sure if it's referring to Abram, his camp. He says there's 318 of them. This is somewhere around, because the message doesn't sometimes give you the exact verse. They'll do like a 13 through 16 or 17 through 20 and things. So this is somewhere in 13 through 16. In the middle of that paragraph, it says, when Abram, this is probably maybe 17, when Abram heard that his nephew had been taken prisoner, he lined up his servants, all of them born in his household. There were 318 of them, and chased after the captives of Dan, all the way to Dan. So he only had 318 people to retrieve his nephew and all that he had, against these 4 kingdoms that were taking out 5 kingdoms. He only had 318 people. And it even says in the next part that Abram and his men split into small groups and attacked by night. So it was a sneaky attack. And he didn't even have all 318 together. So there was some strategic moves going on here with the hand of God for sure, that ensured that everything was going to be okay. Because he did defeat Kedorlaomer, that main king that, was keeping everything, all these kingdoms under his thumb, and was taking over for a good while there. He had people fleeing to the mountains. He had kings in ditches and things. He was taking things down. Abram and his 318 men, his servants, in small groups, took this kingdom down in the allies, took the whole thing and rescued his nephew Lot. So, I mean, only the hand of God could do that. Obviously, Abram is a man of God. He's got the biggest promise ever from God at this time. God is with him, obviously, in so many ways. And also, I mean, Abram's got this promise of this great future. He's not going to die. I mean, he's already been told that he's got things coming in his future that hasn't come to pass yet during this time. So, I mean, that God is with him for sure, and his word is still true. It's still holding, it's still coming to pass. He rescues his nephew Lot, and in turn, it seems like he rescues the king of Sodom and, whatever else is going on there. And it looks like Sodom wants to... He's like, I just want my people and you can have all the plunder. And Abram just doesn't even want any of that. He doesn't want anything to do with that. It says at the end, maybe around verse 23, I'm not going to have you go around saying I made Abram rich. Nothing for me other than what the man ate and the share of the men who went with me, and Anir, Eshcol, and Mamre there to get their share of the plunder. So his allies that helped him in the middle of all this, he wants them to have the reward. He doesn't really care anything about, because he wasn't, for one, he wasn't, not only does he not want like this guy to say that he made him rich, probably because Sodom is like a really sinful place anyway. He doesn't want association with that. But I think also sorry, I'm just looking really into this part. He wasn't really after rescuing the king of Sodom and Gomorrah. That wasn't his plan at all. He wasn't even thinking about those guys. He was just trying to get his nephew and the people that were associated with him back. And this was a byproduct that Sodom and Gomorrah, the kings of those places, were saved. So I think really he just, and it's probably a mix also probably from maybe chapter 12 where Abram did get rich off of something that wasn't right. Maybe he's learned his lesson and he's not trying to repeat anything. He's not trying to have association with any of that, which is good. But this is just a hypothesis of mine. For sure, this was just an indirect save. And it's just also, there's a lot of mention of God. I swear to God, the high God, creator of heaven and earth, this solemn vow that I'll take nothing from you, not so much as a thread or a shoestring. So he's walking with God. Abram's really just trying to be a good old righteous decent man. He's not out trying to get riches. He's already pretty rich. He's done well. He's already okay. And he was able to retrieve what he was after, his family. And in turn, all these other things happened, but he didn't really care about the material gain. It just wasn't really what was on his mind, which, shows a lot of honor in a man, in a person, to be that way, where the material, you're not going to, take advantage of others, so that you can gain. He's not doing that. He's got a lot of honor. Definitely a man of God. One last thing I want to mention is that Melchizedek, because again, I mentioned this in King James Version, but who is this guy? Like, a lot of people say that he's Jesus. I don't know. What do you guys think? Who is this guy? He's just a random, man. He's not mentioned at all before this moment. And it says here in verses 17 through 20, Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and his allied kings. The king of Sodom came out to greet him in the valley of Shaved, the king's valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the high God and blessed him. Blessed be Abram by the high God, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be the high God who handed your enemies over to you. So, I mean, he's just confirming, like, you did this because God allowed it. I mean, honestly, the odds were against Abram. He was just this regular old guy with his 318 people versus this powerful king with other allied kings that were taking out kings that outnumbered them. How was he able to do that other than God? Because in reality, if this king was able to take people out like that, he's got kings falling into ditches and people fleeing to the mountains. He's plundering. He's taking even from people that don't have anything to do with it. How with only 318 is from a regular dude, regular old Joe Schmo, seemingly. How is he able to take that main king down? It's God. Spoiler alert. Not really. Even says it in here. You know, Melchizedek basically confirms it. And blessed be the high God who handed your enemies over to you. If God wants something to be, it's gonna be. It doesn't even matter what we got going. I've said that so many times, but it's just so true. God's word never comes back void, and his will is going to be done. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if the Jordan looked promising. Look at it. It wasn't. Got Lot into a whole lot of trouble in the middle of a war and a rebellion. Meanwhile, we've got Abram walking with God, literally in a deep relationship with God, talking to God, following instructions from God, having faith in God. And he's getting blessed. Even when he's not even going after those things, he's just trying to do the right thing and help his family. He's still extremely blessed out of this. It goes to show you, like, who cares about material things? You know, you will get those things. You can. And you don't have to do it at someone's expense. You could just do the right thing. And good things will happen to you. Yeah, there'll be, like, always crappy things and people with not the right attitudes or hearts trying to come into your path. But there's so many ways to deal with things like that. That doesn't have to be, you know, just evil or just of bad intention or just, you know, to get your lick back and stuff. There's ways to deal with that. And it just seems really interesting that, I mean, Abram's kind of on top of his game right now in the last few chapters. He kind of messed up at 13 with that whole thing and his wife, but since then, he's been really walking with God and following the direction of God. And he's been blessed for that. And beyond, you know, the material and stuff. He's been just really blessed. Really blessed. But, yeah, that's about all I got to say about this. It's really interesting. Abram and Lot are now back together. Kind of. Abram's walking with God. Who is Melchizedek, though? Who's that guy? Can somebody try to break that down? I mean, I'm going to have to research this because I find him very, very fascinating. This Melchizedek, king of Salem, who brought out bread and wine, and he was a priest of the high God, and he blessed Abram, confirming that God handed those enemies over to him with, you know, only 318 men Abram had. And he took out this huge king with an alliance of other kings that was basically just dominating with that small amount. It just really doesn't matter. You know, if God says or if God wills it, it will be. And if you're walking with him versus people who are not walking with him, it doesn't matter how powerful they think they are. God will take them out with only the small amount, you know, the small thing. So it's really interesting. Food for thought to be applied in one's real life, perhaps. But I've already lingered on. This is like 25 minutes long. So I'm going to just close it there. We'll go on to chapter 15, probably. Also, later today, I mentioned that the Shabbat is coming in a few hours. And for this Shabbat and onward, I kind of want to not do this on that day. I don't know, unless God tells me it's okay. But, you know, it's the day of rest, and I think it's a good idea to try to honor it the best that I can. I don't know. So I also probably need to get out and buy a few things, like food-wise, so that I don't do it tomorrow. Didn't think about that either. So I will see you guys later at chapter 14 if you want to partake and read along with me and maybe gather something from it that you can apply to your own life or just to help you understand the word more. I pray many, many blessings over you guys, and just God bless your day, your weekend, and thanks for tuning in. Till next time, I love you. Bye.